A sequel to this cult classic fantasy movie has been in development for almost a decade, and it needs to finally happen. The 1986 fantasy movie Labyrinth is a later addition to the legendary Jim Henson's career, and the visual style and storytelling are representative of this period of fantastical filmmaking. Starring David Bowie and a young Jennifer Connelly as Jareth the Goblin King and the teenage girl Sarah, Labyrinth is a richly imagined adventure that's become a cult classic over the years. Though there are some moments in Labyrinth that haven't aged as well, there are just as many gorgeous elements and relevant themes to make the sequel highly anticipated. Though Labyrinth 2 is confirmed, the planned second installment has hit many snags along the way, as recreating the magic of the original film is a tall order. It's been almost 40 years since Labyrinth first hit screens, but the need for films to fill this niche of fantasy has only grown since then. While fantasy television has been having a renaissance in recent years, there's significant space in the film industry for Labyrinth 2, and since sequels and reboots have proven to be a success at the box office, now is the perfect time for Labyrinth 2. What's going on with Labyrinth 2? Though Brian Henson confirmed that Labyrinth 2 was still in the works last year, there haven't been many updates since then, via CBR. There have been many contradictory reports about the future of Labyrinth 2, as Henson had to speak up about the film's continued confirmation following reports that the sequel had been canceled. Additionally, the film has been loosely in development since 2014 but doesn't have any major names attached outside the Henson Company. Though Jim Henson's family and legacy will likely ensure that Labyrinth 2 stays relevant, this project hasn't seemed like the highest priority. Since the project would be a movie instead of a show, it might be easier to greenlight. Several major directors have been attached over the years, from Fede Alvarez to Scott Derrickson, but both eventually dropped out, leaving the creative side of the project in limbo. However, if Brian Henson felt comfortable actively ensuring fans that the company is still excited about the sequel, then now would be the perfect time to capitalize on that momentum. Though Netflix canceled The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, the Henson Company's other long-awaited sequel, that doesn't mean there isn't demand for Labyrinth 2. Since the project would be a movie instead of a show, it might be easier to greenlight. It'd be great to see more fantasy movies like Labyrinth again. Though certain elements of Labyrinth are very of their time and wouldn't necessarily make it into a sequel, bringing back this genre and type of film would be a great way to get fantasy fans in theaters. 1980s fantasy movies pushed boundaries and are still considered some of the most visually and narratively innovative to this day. Not only would making more movies like Labyrinth play into the nostalgia of audiences who remember seeing these films in theaters in the 80s, but it would also help refresh the genre and remind critics and viewers what makes fantasy so magical. Jim Henson's work is no small part of what makes Labyrinth and many other 80s fantasy movies so iconic and recognizable. While the technological innovations in filmmaking have made many exciting visual effects possible, the practical effects and use of puppetry in older movies have a distinct style and warmth that many contemporary titles are missing. Taking these elements of the original Labyrinth and translating them to a more modern story, as in The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, would be the ideal treatment for Labyrinth 2. The biggest obstacle to Labyrinth 2 is recasting the Goblin King. David Bowie's turn as Jareth the Goblin King is one of the defining aspects of Labyrinth, and finding someone else to play Jareth feels impossible. Since it's unlikely that anyone could match the legacy and charisma of the performer, the best thing for Labyrinth 2 to do is not try to mimic Bowie's Jareth, but create a new character entirely. Little is known about what the potential story of Labyrinth 2 would be, and if it would be a continuation, remake, or prequel. A remake is the riskiest option, especially since this would mean replacing Bowie. However, Making it a proper sequel or prequel would allow the production to use the world of Labyrinth and stand on its own. It's likely that Labyrinth 2 would have a bigger box office than the original, and attaching big names to the project could be a smart path forward for the sequel. While Connolly could return in some way as a fun Easter egg from the original, this would be impossible for Bowie, as the musician passed away in 2016. Honoring his performance in Labyrinth without trying to recreate it is the best option for the upcoming movie.